The Middle East has entered a far more dangerous phase of war. US and Israeli forces are now conducting large-scale airstrikes deep inside Iran. Missile sites, naval assets, and key military infrastructure are among the primary targets. Tehran is responding with waves of missiles and drones. These strikes are aimed not only at Israel, but also at US bases and energy hubs across the Gulf. What began as a direct confrontation between Israel and Iran is now expanding rapidly into a broader regional conflict, one that is starting to pull multiple states onto the same battlefield. The escalation began when the United States and Israel coordinated a series of strikes against Iranian military infrastructure. The attacks focused on facilities linked to missile production, drone operations, and elements of Iran's Revolutionary Guard network. Several locations across central and western Iran were reportedly targeted, signaling a deliberate effort to weaken Tehran's long-range strike capabilities. Iran responded within hours. Missile launches and drone attacks were reported against Israeli territory, while additional projectiles were directed towards strategic sites in the Gulf, where US forces are stationed. Air defense systems across Israel and several Gulf states were activated, as multiple waves of incoming threats were detected. The confrontation quickly moved beyond a limited exchange. Shipping lanes in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz entered a state of heightened alert as regional militaries raised their readiness levels. Several neighboring countries began preparing defensive measures to protect energy infrastructure and key military facilities. At this stage, the situation is no longer defined by a single strike or retaliation. What is unfolding is a widening military confrontation between Iran and a coalition led by the United States and Israel, one that could reshape the strategic balance across the entire Middle East. The current escalation reflects a strategic calculation made in Washington and Tel Aviv. Both governments appear to have concluded that Iran's expanding missile and drone capabilities posed a growing long-term threat. By striking key military infrastructure inside Iran, they aim to disrupt those capabilities before they can be used on a larger scale. From a military perspective, these strikes are not only about immediate damage, they are also meant to demonstrate reach. Attacking facilities deep inside Iranian territory sends a clear signal that Iran's strategic assets remain vulnerable, even far from its borders. For Iran, the response follows a different logic. Tehran's strategy relies heavily on deterrence through retaliation. By launching missiles and drones towards Israel and US positions across the region, Iran is trying to show that any direct strike on its territory will carry immediate regional consequences. This dynamic creates a cycle of escalation. Each side believes that restraint could weaken its position. As a result, both are trying to prove they can impose higher costs on the other. Geography also plays a critical role. Iran cannot easily confront the United States or Israel through conventional military power alone. Instead, it relies on long-range missiles, drones, and regional pressure points, such as shipping routes and energy infrastructure. For Washington and its allies, the challenge is different. They must contain Iran's retaliation while preventing the conflict from expanding to additional fronts. Every new strike increases the risk of drawing more actors into the confrontation, making the situation progressively harder to control. The escalation immediately places several countries in a difficult strategic position. Gulf states that host US military facilities now face the risk of becoming direct targets if Iranian retaliation continues. Even if they are not directly involved in the fighting, their territory and energy infrastructure remain within range of Iranian missiles and drones. Energy markets are already reacting to this risk. The Persian Gulf is one of the most critical corridors for global oil shipments, and any disruption to the Strait of Hormuz could carry worldwide economic consequences. Even the perception that these shipping routes are unsafe can push energy prices higher and place additional pressure on global supply chains. Major global powers are also watching the situation closely. European governments must balance support for their allies with growing concerns about a wider regional war. At the same time, countries such as China and Russia maintain strong economic and strategic ties with Iran, turning the conflict into a sensitive geopolitical issue that extends far beyond the Middle East. The longer the confrontation continues, the harder it becomes to keep it contained. What began as a direct confrontation between Israel and Iran now carries the risk of evolving into a broader regional crisis, one that could reshape security dynamics across the entire Middle East. The key question now is not simply how much damage each side can inflict, but how far this confrontation is allowed to expand. Direct strikes between Israel and Iran have already crossed a threshold that both sides avoided for years. Once that barrier is broken, controlling escalation becomes far more difficult. Every response invites another counterstrike, and each new round increases the number of actors who may feel compelled to intervene. For the United States, the strategic objective will likely focus on limiting the conflict while maintaining deterrence against Iran. For Iran, the challenge is different, demonstrating strength without provoking a level of retaliation that could threaten the stability of its own military infrastructure. What happens next will depend on whether this confrontation settles into a controlled exchange of pressure, or whether the region is moving toward a much larger and far more unpredictable phase of war.